Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Three Bears podcast. We're so glad to have you join us today. I hope we can give you something that's encouraging, where we just hope through our podcast we'll help you find balance in your life and ministry and everyday things that we find ourselves experiencing. And with me, as always, are the boys. Parker and Peyton are with me today. Me and Peyton are trying a different format, being outside today of everything. Today's it is hot a little bit, but today's episode, we're going to kind of talk about intimacy and worship, kind of what that looks like, share a little bit of our story from where when we started Acadiana Baptist Church down here in Lafayette in 2016, and an extremely small number, and what that looked like for us then, and how much we appreciate it now. And maybe it'll help you find a greater balance in your worship, because we all worship doing different ministry at the same time. Parker leading worship, Peyton and I do the same thing. Peyton sometimes is on the computer. I'm worshiping while I preach, and I'm going to kind of share with you some tips and clues from our journey and how it might be an experience to you. But before we get to that, guys, what's going on with the Three Bears? What's going on in Peyton's world? What's going on in Parker's world?
Sponsored by Mountain Dew.
There you go.
I got a text yesterday from somebody who watches this and said, where the Three Bears been? I said, we've been hibernating. We've we've just been really busy. Honestly. I was finishing up school, finish up my finals and everything, and as well as working a lot. So trying to find the balance between finishing school as well as uh church work,
Yeah.
getting stuff ready for our busy summer.
Yeah.
I do the rec at our church camps, so trying to get all that stuff done so I don't have to worry about it throughout our trips. But that's kind of what I've been up to.
Yeah.
We have missed you guys. We did record an episode, but it kind of like messed up halfway through it.
Yeah.
So we just kind of like scratched it, and we're kind of giving like I guess like a redo, almost of kind of a little bit about who we are and how we all started. So that's what I've been up to.
Yeah.
So.
I've just been diving into church work with doing promotional materials, trying to get our goodie bags for like visitors or like people whenever we do big events, like our like we'll be doing summer kickoff in like 3 weeks, and so we'll have these trifold brochures that we can just hand out to people about our church. It's got our service times on it. Kind of got the idea from Big Bear, Father Bear,
Hey.
to do it. And so yeah, I've just been diving into that, getting it all edited and looking good and everything. And baby dedication this Sunday, or if this is
Oh,
past,
yeah.
and then on Mother's Day, that's what that is. And then Senior Sunday, the week before, we've just all been busy. It seems
Yeah.
like the May to March is like busy Sunday morning stuff.
Yeah, with Easter included and all that.
It's included
For
in
us,
everything.
May to the end of July is our busy
Chaos.
time. It's um we have all the different camps that we go to. I'm an evangelist at another camp this summer. I'll be at two other camps helping Peyton. You and I are helping Peyton with Rec at next camp, and we have our camp that I'm the registrar for. So camps are really busy. We have the ABA national meeting in Springfield. So a lot of big things going on in the next couple of weeks for us, couple months for us. But as far as recreation, I know me and Peyton went and played a round of disc golf. You disc any? You disc golfed any this past couple weeks?
No, I haven't.
We got to
I've
get on it. But
taken my notes.
you haven't hit your CrossFit, had a personal record I saw on your
No,
Facebook the other day.
no.
Well, you were working out with your former previous personal record, right? That's what it
Year
was.
ago, I was doing a clean complex with the heaviest weight. Like a year ago, that was my PR.
PR, right?
Like full on complex with it. So
Yeah, good stuff.
Big
Good
boy
stuff.
weight.
That's absolutely. Well,
I
let's
don't
get
know.
into kind of what today's podcast is about, and we want to really kind of share some of our story with you, and we appreciate you guys for listening. I also got a text. Well, your mama got a text actually. Mama Bear got a text from a friend of ours that watched and really appreciated what we all kind of did and how we talked with each other, and they really are enjoying the format. We hope everybody else is too. We love hearing those encouraging words. But like I said, I want to talk to you talk today a little bit about intimacy and worship, and why it's taken on maybe a different look for all three of us because of what we experienced when we came down here. Just so everybody kind of knows, when we began Acadiana Baptist Church here in Lafayette, we were sent by Calvary in Minden, Louisiana. Big shout out to our sponsoring church. Put a lot of trust in us. A lot of other churches that jumped on board to help us do what we needed to do. We had big hopes for our first Sunday having 150 people. We had set up like 50 chairs and big giant thing of coffee, several dozen donuts. We thought the room was going to be packed, standing room only, like needed a VIP, red, curtain to let people in and out of because and nobody came. It was just us four, me, you, and your mother, and it was a very tough time. There were some very tough Sundays. I remember a Father's Day before we left to go to the ABA. I was just really demoralized, and you guys all just encouraged me and got me through that. And but every Sunday we set up through that first summer. We set up, we showed up, we sang. I preached, sometimes just preaching to you three, and I know that helped form this very special way that we view worship. That worship isn't about quantity of people, but it's about quality of heart. And I'm curious, how those served several times in first couple months, first year when our numbers were so small, how those things affected y'all and some of your thoughts about it.
I'll go first because I know Parker took it from a different perspective with doing music, but for me, growing up, we've always been in church with other people. It's something that me and Parker we were used to. I mean, we went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. We had a youth group there. We had people who were our age there, and it was easy. It was unique. We just kind of went with the flow of everything, and then we moved down here, and we put in all this work to get all this equipment, set up all these different chairs, all the food, everything, just willing for people. And at the time, I was just a seventh grader. I didn't really understand it. Whenever you do all this different stuff and nobody shows up, you don't understand it because all that you've known your entire life was if you have church, people are going to come. And we saw that. Over time, it was unique. It was hard for me to really grasp and understand. We're doing all this work and we're putting all this work in, yet we're seeing no growth. We're seeing nobody walk through the doors. And after a while, it does get to you. I know you're going to ask a question later about, when did our faith become our own? So I'm not going to answer that right now. But for me, I was a seventh grader and I had to learn how to do all of our ProPresenter and all of our audio and visual for Dad and Parker. So it made it kind of easy because it's what I did for the next 5 to 6 years till Parker left. So it set up a good basis of we're going to stick to who we are and we're not going to let it change. Whether we have people here or not have people here, we're always going to be transparent. We're always going to have service. No matter if we have 5 people or just 2 of us, we're going to have a service. And I remember some of the best worship services we had, or some of the most intimate we had, was whenever we would forget about the chairs. Me, Mom, and Parker, we'd literally huddle up pretty much.
Yeah.
And Dad would do a devotional.
I remember that.
It was just some of the best times that we had because at that moment, whenever you realize that you're totally relying on God and you're totally just relying on each other as a family, that's where you build, okay, let's launch from here to do great things for God.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I take it. I know Parker, you may have a different thing doing music, but
for me, it was always you pick out all this music and then you do it. There's at least whenever I was in high school. Once I got into college, it became a whole different perspective. Even though for me, it was always you pick music out, you hope there's going to be people there. So you're always trying to pick music that's on the radio, and that honestly that burned me out for the radio, listening to the radio. That's why if a new song comes out, I'm like, let's do it because no, it's not on the radio yet. It's not overdone. Nobody hates this song yet, Um, and So it was always picking music that, people would know, because in case someone did walk in, I don't want, the three people in the back, or the three people or two people in the back and the one person in the front who's about to preach, to be the only one singing. Because then it singles, without singling out that person, it singled out that person. So in my mind, I was like, I'm just gonna try and pick music that everyone enjoys. And then, we had this great service, like our kickoff service, like I guess our cold open, I guess, I don't know,
Yeah.
where we had, 164 people, but 160 of those people were church people from up north, right?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Yeah, they were like, oh, the Abraham family, they're going down here to do this awesome thing, and there was a bunch of people. And so
Yeah.
then the next week, we're like, okay, we're gonna have four people. It's good. It's awesome. And I think no one showed up.
Yeah. It was
So
crazy. We had one visitor from Lafayette, aside from our family, at that service. Everybody else was from another visiting church, all over. We had people from Arkansas, Texas, Mississippi that were all there for that Sunday. But for the most part, it was them, us, and one other person who didn't come back for about 2.5 years, and actually got saved when we baptized her. And so that was pretty cool to see that happen. But it was definitely a tough time. But I thought, while Peyton was talking, I got to thinking about when COVID hit and we were home alone. We've always been a very close family, but I really think those original first couple months kind of made that as just not a big deal for us to worship together. We used to do a Sunday morning selfie all the time, posted on Instagram, Facebook, and
there's
Cindy would always put the hashtag, worship together, stay together. And that's kind of what we always did. So here we are now, 7, 8 years removed from that. You're full time on staff, leading worship. Peyton just got a 1,000% raise for doing the job that he does at church. He makes zero money, so 1,000% raise is still $0. But he's doing a great job. Matter of fact, he's got a lot of great ideas we're going to be talking about in the future for outreach. He had a great visit with a friend of yours up there, Dennis Blackerby, and our friend Sean. Big shout out. Yeah, they're coming down to LOL in a couple of weeks. Can't wait to see them. Got a lot of great ideas he's going to start putting in practice, and I'm excited about it. But here we are, 8 years later. Things are very different. The church is doing very well. The mission's doing great, and we're all serving. Okay, so let's take two parts of a service. You have the singing part, and we have the preaching part. Okay, let's talk about the singing part specifically for this episode. I want us to stay in that pocket, because we are all doing different things at that time. I mean, I'm not, unless I'm on the stage helping to sing that Sunday like I am this Sunday. But what does worship look like for the individual that's serving during that time? Like, Parker, how would you define worship? And I think you'll be able to give us a good working definition of what worship is.
Um, for me, worship, well, it's different. It's in different stages of, ministry. I think for me, because actually doing the service, oh, hit my laptop. Actually, the doing the service is I'm ushering people into the throne room of God, or I'm attempting to. Some people don't want to be ushered, and you just gotta, hey,
Yeah.
this isn't your thing. I hope you find another outlet to worship,
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, that's the hard thing. Some people just they don't sing. It's not their jam. Hey, I hope you find another way to worship. But for the people that want that, singing is their thing, and worshiping this way is their thing. You're trying to not create an environment, but create an atmosphere that is conducive to allowing them to worship God freely without distractions
Yeah.
from the technical side of
Right.
things.
So worship would in a sense be our response to God's revelation. That would be a great idea, because when I think of worship and what you're talking about, you mentioned the throne room specifically. I think of Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 6, where he has this vision that your King Uzziah dies. He sees the Lord high and lifted up. He sees the glory of God, and in that seeing it, he responds with just humbling himself before God, and ask God to cleanse him, and then hears God's voice and responds to that. I believe that's the biggest picture of worship that we can find. So as you're creating that environment, there are a lot of ways to do it. Some people think it has to be very liturgical, where it's just by this, follow this plan, boom, 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 boom. Others believe it can be kind of free. Some it's got to be a mixture of both. But let's talk about for the song leader listening to our podcast. Okay. How does Parker worship on Sunday? And Peyton, the same question will be for you when you're back there controlling the computer and the volume and everything. How do you worship during that time? I know what I do, and I'll share it in a little bit, but what do you guys do?
So for me, my worship comes from my preparation in the week.
Yes.
Because if all I'm doing is worshiping on Sunday, I might as well not even do it then.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I'm just doing my job, you
Yeah.
know. And if I'm calling that worship, then I'm not being a good follower of Christ. So my preparation comes from worship in the week, my private time, and my private worship to where I get to, whether it's sing songs that I normally wouldn't sing on a Sunday morning that are great personal worship songs,
Yeah.
but I just need to worship myself in my own private time and fill my cup up. And then by filling my cup up and letting the Lord fill it up, I'm leading from the overflow, which is a, a phrase that you hear tossed around a lot. But if we're so filled up with Jesus where we don't have any room for ourselves, and I think worship comes from your preparation in the week, to where on Sunday morning you don't have to worry about, oh, I've got to do this XYZ thing. I've got to remember this XYZ thing about this song and this part.
Right. Yeah.
So for me, it's just I prepare in the week and I worship in the week, to where on Sunday morning I'm worshiping just like the people in the pews.
Yeah. Good.
Uh,
Yeah. You just have to be the one in front of the microphone looking
yeah.
at them, and they're looking at you, but we're all looking to Jesus. I like that. Peyton, I know you write a lot of notes during the sermon and things like that. And some people might be thinking that to worship, it means that you're just in this moment where you're just before God. But you're very active in the way that you worship, in the way that you sing, especially when I'm leading singing like Parker and I look back to the sound booth. I see you really singing in the moment, and you're also, while I'm preaching, writing a lot of notes. You don't see that as a distraction. That's part of your worship. How would you explain that?
So I know you want to talk about the preaching in another episode.
Yeah,
But I mean, for during worship specifically is I worship while everybody else is worshiping. Like, just because I'm in control of controlling the screens or the sound doesn't mean that I can't sing along and worship as well.
Mhm.
And hear God speaking to you at the
Absolutely.
same time.
I try to take it from a perspective of, if I'm distracted while I am clicking the screen or doing ProPresenter or whatever else it is, then all it takes is for me to mess up, and it can turn everybody else off from worshiping as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't click the slide 0.25 seconds fast enough, and you got sister whoever looking back at you like you're crazy. So realizing that you're kind of, like Parker said, setting the atmosphere or setting the environment ready, conducive for worship, that is part of it. Making sure that it flows seamlessly enough to where everybody else can worship.
Yeah.
I mean, as well as I like to sing along just because I know the songs as well. But whenever you're back there and you're kind of clicking the screens and doing ProPresenter and the sound, is part of it, I guess, because you're looking at the screen as well, but you get to focus on the words a lot more than what you're just singing.
Correct.
That's what I find a lot is sometimes I'm on the stage and I'm singing and I worship that way. Whenever I'm in the back, I like to focus on the words more than the song of itself. And I find that's how I worship more, is by doing that, is by not, one, trying to eliminate all distractions as possible.
Right.
And two, truly seeing it more as a worship service and not a performance.
Yeah. And that's another thing we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about in a couple of weeks, on the difference in worship and performance. And guys on the stage have to really, as a preacher, have to experience that. And Parker and Peyton as songlers, we have to experience that also. And so one of the things that I think is really important, and Parker, you do this a lot more than I'm comfortable with personally, and that's not a knock. It's just the way it is. there's a lot of songs out there that guys can lead that I've never heard before, and it doesn't mean it's a bad song. It just causes me, and what I have to push myself to do is focus on the words, because we can become too familiar, even with the hymns. It's the same thing with a hymn book that's got 4 verses, and we sing the first, second, and last. Some people may never pick up a hymn book and they're singing the first, second, and last. You throw in that third verse though, everybody's reaching for a book because they don't know the words. It's become so familiar, and that familiarity can be a really difficult thing at times. And basically, what you guys are talking about is we have to battle against worship being common, and it has to be something that we really pour our hearts into, and it's a heartfelt moment between you and God. And I know that we don't have to do this, but a tear does not have to be shed for a person to worship. A hand doesn't have to be in the air for a person to worship. And multiple hands in the air doesn't mean that there is worship. It could be just an emotional response, or doing it because somebody else is doing it. Those outward movements really have nothing to do with worship, in my opinion. I think they have nothing to do with it. We sing, gratitude, and talks about there's a lion in our lungs, and we shout that out to God. And there are songs that even talk about with our hands lifted high, we just praise God. You don't have to do that to worship. So I don't want anybody to feel like they have to do that in order to worship. There are times when I have, and there are times when I have not. There have been times when during one time I hear a song, I can shout and hands and even clap in the middle of a song.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are times I hear the exact same song and it doesn't happen. I think when we try and manufacture worship, it can be a big problem. And I think that's a big issue that people have. Do you guys have any other thoughts on what can help a person on a Sunday morning? Or let's throw this crazy thought out there, on a Wednesday night or a Sunday night or a non-revival service type of night, where just First Thessalonians chapter 3 is opened up and discussed. What are some things that we can say to help somebody worship God, even in those, I guess we'll call them tame, teachable nights, because those are still moments to worship. What do you guys think?
Something that really just clicked in my mind is we think of the song service as the song service. We go up there, 4 songs, preach, that's it. It's a routine. If our worship's become a routine, then it's not worship in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be, like we've all said, a heartfelt moment. If your heartfelt moment is you go up there and you go through nonchalantly, not expecting to get anything out of it, well, then you've already kind of set yourself up wrong going into the preaching hour or the teaching hour, whatever it is. So not taking it for granted that you do have the ability, another way that you can show honor to God, which is through the worship service.
Right.
So I think changing your mindset and changing your perspective on that in the first place is a good starting point.
It's a good tip. Parker, as a worship leader, what do you think? What would help the average church member on a Sunday morning come to church ready to worship?
Not expecting the worship leader to do all the work for you. And that's not to say like you need to memorize this music, because I mean that's the reason we have words on a wall. But I mean also being prepared to worship is by studying your own scripture. Studying, you know what I mean, studying God's scripture, but your own copy of it.
Yeah.
Need to clarify. I don't know why, but because I mean the Bible says study and show thyself approved, right? I don't know what out of context, so tell me if I'm wrong, but part of worshiping is being a good steward with what he's given us, and being a good steward of being a holder of, I don't have any Bibles near me, I think they're up on the counter, is by knowing, the Bible, because that's part of worship, is knowing God's word, because that's how he speaks. He doesn't speak in word, he can speak in worship service too, but he's not going to talk in an audible voice. Sometimes he speaks, through your prayer life, and certainly through his Bible, through his word. So if you're not reading it, you're not preparing yourself or setting yourself up for worship very well.
Yeah.
So don't expect the worship leader on the Sunday morning to give you this miraculous worship experience.
Yeah.
You expect him or her to do the heavy lifting for you. They're worshiping just like you.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything magical. They just have a microphone and in-ears in their ears. It's
being a
nothing.
mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Huh?
Just being a mouthpiece. Yeah.
Being a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
It's,
And then we crazy
you know
lady
what?
talking in our ears. So
Right. It's like, I think if somebody preached this one time, I stole it. It sounded good to me that if you're waiting on worship to begin when the first note hits on a piano, or now the string is plucked on a guitar, you've missed the opportunity almost. You have to prepare yourself, as you guys are saying, changing your mindset to look at worship in a special way. Guys, I think that's a great place to stop for today. I appreciate y'all's input. I think it's a good thing to look at. I want to just thank all of our listeners for listening to our podcast and tuning in. You can always subscribe by looking at the Three Bears podcast. And we hope that something you hear from us is a blessing. We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at what's that email address? Three Bears Podcast at gmail.com. Three Bears Podcast at gmail.com.
Number 3.
The number 3. The number 3, my Lord. 3, like from Shrek.
putting a
That's from
4.
Shrek. You don't remember? 3, my Lord. 3. That's anyway.
It's gonna be the Two Bears podcast.
Anyway, one more thing. I'll give you guys a heads up. Next week, Mama Bear is going to be joining us. Mama Bear is going to be joining us on the podcast.
Scariest of us all.
She is going to be talking about being a pastor's wife and raising children alone on the pew, because she had to raise both of you guys up on the pew while I was up there preaching. She was basically a single mom in church, and a lot of pastors' wives may feel something. Some young preachers' wives might feel the same way. So she's going to talk with us about those things.
How to be a good preacher's kid as well.
And how to make good preachers' kids. We'll see if that comes out. Who knows? But listen, we love you guys. We appreciate you guys for tuning in, and look for the Three Bears podcast everywhere you subscribe for podcast, which basically means only YouTube for us at this time. Sooner or later in the future, we'll be on all those other places, iTunes, iPod, what's it called?
I got it.
Spotify. We might be on Spotify one day.
Spotify, podcast apps.
Podcast apps. Great. Well, hey, thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys. We love y'all. Three Bears love you. Have a great day.
See you.
Bye-bye.